This is Heidi White with an urgent news alert brought to you by the Worldwide Threat Podcast System. We interrupt this regularly scheduled program to bring you a breaking news story that could impact millions around the globe. We have just received reports of a significant incident unfolding. Eyewitnesses are describing chaotic scenes, and we are working to gather more information as it becomes available. We are urging everyone watching to follow this story closely. We will continue to monitor this developing story and provide updates as more information comes to light. In the meantime, we encourage our listeners to stay tuned to the WWT News Bites channel for further coverage and to follow our social media channels for real-time updates.
What we are actually finding is that there is an increased threat resulted in an alarming number of deaths by suicide. When you have someone that has truly unlimited access to the world via the internet, Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat really took on a life of their own.
We're in a spiritual battle. It's all about showing people what a threat is.
The way that we protect our children 20, 30 years ago is so different from what that looks like now. How do we care for a generation that is so far advanced in their understanding of this technology?
It's all about how we can pay attention and help our kids be more aware of what's going on out there. Valuable and free information from experts are contained in these short 7 to 15 minute podcasts. We want to help people understand the various end-time threats and provide real-time solutions along with the tools needed for their friends, families, and businesses to survive. Followers of our channel can receive a free action guide on each topic weekly. We hope that these guides will help people prepare for the serious threats we all face at this time in history.
I grew up in a household. It was just my brother and I. And as we got older, our parents remarried. And so 3 brand new sisters were born into the family one after another. And the youngest is 17. But I've watched this kind of iteration as each one has come of age and really come into the digital age, how so many things have changed, right? The way that we protect our children 20, 30 years ago is so different from what that looks like now. And I saw my youngest sister go from a private Christian education where they didn't have tablets in class and it was just very classical, as she moved into high school, being this door thrown wide open of technology. And suddenly the access to information and subsequently the access that others had to her was a little scary at first. And so we started having a lot of these conversations around when you have someone that has truly unlimited access to the world via the internet and vice versa. How do we care for a generation that is so far advanced in their understanding of this technology, so often, so much more than we are?
Well, you told me the other day when we chatted that you had a mother that was really dialed into this, right?
Yeah. So my mother was like an in the trenches mother. It's fantastic. She still is. When we were really young, we grew up in the inner city. And so she educated herself on what it looked like to be approached for drugs or all of these other things. And so she would sit at the kitchen table and would put oregano into Ziploc bags or baking soda into Ziploc bags and say, this is what this drug looks like. This is what they will say would be the upside to it, as they're trying to entice you. But this is the reality of what it does to your body. And having that information and the freedom to really make a decision for yourself based on all of the facts made it so that when that time came that we were told about all of these things at school, we got to say, that's not something I want for me. And the pressure, that peer pressure, which typically comes from a gap of knowledge, wasn't there. But times have changed, right? In terms of the things that we're presented with in this world are just different.
It's crazy. So how old were you when you started really become cognitive of this?
So I'm 35. I would say right around my early 30s, I worked a lot with middle school and high school youth in my late 20s. And we heard of things in school like bullying and those things. But when Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat really kind of took on a life of their own, so I would say about 10 years ago-ish, I really started to see the shift where a lot of these things were happening behind closed doors and behind the scenes. And there was a lot of secrecy, I think is the best word, secrecy around how some of this bullying was happening before it really came to light.
Yeah, and the kids, like we've got 5 grandchildren. And in fact, Noel told me about something when we did the interview, which is a product called Bark, or an app called Bark that you're probably familiar with, that can help parents kind of watch what's going on. And so what's your real experience with your conversation with Noel and within your own world about human trafficking?
Oof. So, I mean, I'm married to the CEO of a counter trafficking organization, right? So the exposure is just day after day after day. But I will say the experience as a female kind of in this world has been truly the more you know, the better off we are. And so rather than moving into a mode of operation of fear, we really move into the mode of operation of let's have some awareness. He's talked about a product called Birdie, which is like a personal safety alarm that we all now have. We all share locations with one another. There's just lots of safeguards that help us to be, again, not fear driven, but really in a high level of awareness, which the fantastic piece of that, I will say, unexpected, is there's a great level of accountability. We all know where each other is. And it really keeps us really in the know and on the same page and of one mind and one accord. And that works with my sisters as well. We all share each other's locations, so we all know where each other is at all times.
What kind of things have you encountered when you're trying to develop this kind of software and these kind of programs? Have you heard from mothers when they're trying to get past a childhood trauma or something where the kid's been traumatized, or maybe it's a single family situation where they're even having a hard time communicating? Have you had to deal with any of that? Actually,
as you say that, it's challenging. Accountability can feel like a harsh word sometimes, and sometimes we don't feel, I would say parents, particularly as you talk about trauma and some of the things that leaves behind, the residue that's there will sometimes, make a parent a little bit more cautious about exercising accountability and authority. But the reality is that accountability allows us all to really operate in the open. And so often when these things happen, children don't always have a true idea of what they're getting themselves into. And so having a level of accountability, the Bible is really, really clear that what operates in darkness is just not good for us. And so when we bring it into the light, there's so much freedom across the board. And so that's really the heart of this. We don't just want to give parents tools for like, hey, what do you do if this happens? But how do you establish a culture of accountability within your own home that allows for freedom to have all types of conversations without shame or judgment?
That's amazing, because we're in a spiritual battle, which and part of what this show is all about, what's on my wife and I's heart for producing this show, is all about showing people what a threat is, making them aware of it, get past what's called a black swan, and then giving them tools with experts like yourself that they can put in a notebook and print off and use through our action guides to become powerful in this instead of just being defeated by the system or by the enemy. You're almost creating a step-by-step guide with your software to help the parents, right?
Yeah. Our mission is really simple. We want to empower families to connect worldwide. We want them to thrive in an age that's digital. And so some of that will be driven via tools such as a social contract, like a social media contract. Some of it will be driven by a step-by-step guide on helping both the parent and the child determine, am I ready for a device? Which I love, because no child wants to be told, no, you can't have that, or you're too young or you're immature. So, for example, it's a guide that allows a child to answer questions like, do I turn in my homework on time? Do I do my chores with excellence? And do I have to be told twice? And they answer like this questionnaire that at the very end helps them reflect and say, given all of these answers, do I feel I'm ready for stewarding the responsibility of a device? And the parent takes the same thing. So if their answers don't match, it's good. It's good conversation. And if their answers match, it's driven out of they mutually feel like they're on the same page and this is a good idea. And if for some reason the child's answers are like, wow, maybe I'm not ready, now the conversation can become, these are some of the areas where you can improve and get really skilled at so that you are ready. Because I mean, making your bed every morning, it seems like it wouldn't be connected to social responsibility as far as social media is concerned, but it is all kind of connected.
Yeah. Please describe for our audience what sextortion is.
Oh, I mean, I wish it wasn't such a prevalent word in our society, but sextortion, the FBI has defined it as a crime that when young people believe they're communicating with someone and then they reveal photos of themselves that are compromising, and that person who is not another child or peer is actually an adult, then essentially sextorts, requesting more photos and stating, hey, if I don't get these photos, I'm going to release the ones that I already have, right? And so they'll ask for photos, they might start asking for videos, and the threat to publish the content, that threat or threat of violence if they don't publish the content, is often what leaves a child, kind of buried in shame. And then connected to that, and unfortunately is something that's growing out of that, is financial sextortion. So financial sextortion is essentially the same thing, except instead of threatening for the purpose of receiving more content, they'll threaten to receive finances. So they'll say, it's a little bit different than the traditional sextortion. They'll request money. And here's the thing, when you have a young person being asked for something that may not be in their direct possession, what we are actually finding is that this increased threat has resulted in an alarming number of deaths by suicide, because children feel that they've not just created a dangerous situation for themselves, but a burdening situation that's shameful for their families. And maybe they know their families can't pay whatever the sum is. And so to that point, the FBI is clearly very aware of this. You're in this situation, there is an entire task force dedicated to this.
I can see where Noel really married up by marrying you.
Thank you. I feel like the Holy Spirit's all called us to be really, really good gatekeepers. So in front of me is just kind of like a long slew of different scripture that we've written on one of our walls. And it reminds me of what you said earlier, because it says, for all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, and the pride of life is not from the Father, but of the world. And so when we start using that as the lens over all of these things, we start to see like it becomes easier to identify what is and what is not of the world and is not of the Father. And so that's really our mission, is to give families that lens to discern.
This content is really valuable for parents, grandparents, teachers, anybody that's really churches, school ministries with kids. What I'd like to finish with is just give me a 2-minute dissertation about your app, a name, and where we're going to be able to get it. I think you told me the other day it's already on a laptop, but it's going to be an app within a couple months, right?
Yeah. So it's The Collective, and it's really that simple and that straightforward. So the global vision is to redefine how families can communicate and connect. So it's going to be a place exactly like you said. So let's say you belong to a church group, and we'll place you in community, which we think is a huge part of this. So if people from your church group join, then you guys will be placed in a pod together. You'll be placed in pods with parents who have kids of the same age. You can be placed with pods with kids who are interested in the same games and all of these things, because we believe that the information is actually, it's in the room, right? We've all got different experiences in which we can share. It is going to be something that's hopefully available to anyone and everyone. We've also had the pleasure of receiving a grant from a company called Place of Hope, a not-for-profit, who said, we want to place money behind this. And the ultimate goal is to keep the price point, the point of entry low, like $25, $30 a month, and then create a fund where if there are families that can't afford that we cover, we come together and we cover that so that we level the playing field and everyone has equal access to this information, and grandparents and parents alike can really move forward together as a village, as a community.
Wow. You've really thought about this. It's excellent. So what we're going to do is we're going to put all this out, and we're going to share more of it. And I'm sure I'm going to come back to you with something, because this is huge, that we need to really get out to the public and let them know what you're doing. This is important stuff. So I really appreciate you taking your time to visit with us today, and I appreciate who you and Noel are and what you're doing in the kingdom and with these projects that you're on. So bless you. Have a great weekend. We'll catch you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. I hope you're blessed with this information. Please like, subscribe, and click on the notification tab to our channel, and we will send you advance notices about upcoming threats to be discussed. Remember to capture the free action guides via our QR code embedded in the episode at the end.
This has been a breaking news update from the WWT News Bites system. We encourage our listeners to stay tuned to the WWT News Bites channel for further coverage and to follow our social media channels for real-time updates. Stay informed and stay safe.